Hello everyone, welcome in. Let's just, I've started things up a minute early just to make sure that everything's working, and I'm just monitoring who's coming in and who's on the chat. So if you can just let me know it's all good, just that would be great. Just give me the thumbs up if you think if everything's working okay. That would be great. Looks okay on my end, so I think we're all good to go. A lot to cover today. A lot of really great techniques, spending a lot of time getting the resource together and thinking about, okay, how can I explain a lot of the techniques that that I want to get through. And so I think you're going to learn a lot, no matter where you are on the Power BI education curve. Okay, super. If I'm looking to the side, it's just I'm monitoring the various different things that you need to watch out when you're running these things. And it looks like we've got people from all around the world, so incredible. Had over 500 registered for this event, so expecting a pretty good turnout today. And obviously, I think that this sort of topic around prediction is a very popular one because it's so versatile. You can use it, and you can utilize these techniques in so many different ways on basically any scenario. It's just a matter of understanding how to combine lots of the different things that we'll go through today. And hopefully that's my sort of like key takeaway is how do you combine all of these techniques together to create a really compelling Power BI report, really compelling analysis that people are going to value. Okay, so let's jump into it. Just a very quick intro because I know a lot of you, some of you probably haven't come across me much before, and so I'd like to do just a quick intro. So my name's Sam Mackay, and I'm the founder of Enterprise DNA. Really, Enterprise DNA's focus is on empowering users of Power BI to create some incredible analysis. That's the simple description there. We do a lot of things to support those who upgrade to membership, Enterprise DNA membership, around say on-demand courses, resources, support, events, training like this, etc. So that really takes up all my time, and getting a lot of traction out there. A lot of people really benefiting from the stuff we put out. So yeah, really happy with the impact we're making out there. Now, to be honest, from my perspective, it's very easy to talk about Power BI because it's such a good tool. It is such an incredible tool for analysis. In my view, there's just no better out there. My background was primarily Excel. I mean, as soon as I saw Power BI, I was like, well, this is the tool to really take analysis to scale analysis within organizations in a really efficient way. And it's certainly playing out exactly how I thought a few years ago when it was re-released. It's obviously on the back of that, it's just easy for me to promote it and market it and say I've got a tool that is, because I can just see the impact it's making out there. Now, obviously, you need to use it well, so there's no getting away from that. And to use it well, there's quite a lot you need to understand around the different aspects of Power BI. So that's certainly the stuff I like to talk about, is how you can utilize this great tool in a really effective way within organizations. Okay, so that's probably enough of an intro. What are we going to do? What are we going to cover today? So we're covering prediction, but in amongst that, there's lots of other techniques we're going to cover. So you can't just create scenario analysis, predictive type models without having to incorporate lots of other things. So yes, that's the outcome that we're going to get to, but there's a lot of things we need to incorporate in our design and development of our model to make sure that this works. And so hopefully within the next sort of hour, maybe a little bit longer, I think, because I've got a little bit more I wanted to cover than I initially thought. But within an hour or so, I think we'll cover a lot of that stuff, and you'll go away. Hopefully, you'll go away thinking, "Wow, I can apply this to myself to what I'm doing right now." I'm very confident in that. So we'll be covering things like forecasting, because obviously, if you're doing some sort of future prediction, we needed to create some sort of base forecast. I'm going to show you the methodology that I ran through to create that. Now, I have done a few of these in the past, and I've taken things up a level in terms of complexity around the forecast, because some people have been asking for it. So looking forward to showing you that. We're going to go over data modeling, how you can, in a lot of cases, actually simplify your data model for this type of analysis. Now, I'm still seeing a lot of very complex data models, and I'm one of extreme simplification, and I'm going to show you a few techniques in the data model that you can utilize yourself, and then on top of that, the correct DAX formula that you need to utilize to work in with that simplified model. Then we're going to go through what are parameters. So these are key in terms of how you actually do some sort of scenario analysis, prediction type work. Then we're going to cover things like calculate, filter, treat as, accept, all these great functions that you can use in Power BI. And then in amongst that, we're going to cover a lot of topics that I like talking about, like measure branching, which is a development methodology, iterating functions, what have we got, cumulative totals, table functions, a whole variety of things. Okay, so I want to jump into it. Don't want to take any more time around explaining things. Let's actually just dive in. I will, throughout the session, how I like it to work, I will try my best on the chat, but there is a lot of people watching that right now. We've got almost 120, so it's hard to monitor all of that, as well as make sure that I get all the content out to you. So really, I will focus on the content mostly, and then maybe we'll have a few questions at the end. But if there's something really relevant to what I'm explaining around some technique, etc., that we're going through, then I'm happy to try and divert and answer it. Yeah, and I guess the only other thing is if you do have questions, keep them on point if you can. That really does help me out a lot. Okay, so just before we get going, I'm happy to get any thoughts or questions from anyone about maybe what we will be talking about. So yes, and I get this question quite a bit as well. Something to keep in mind. Yes, this is recorded and will be available. If you've registered for the event, you will get an automated email a couple of hours after this, and it will direct you to where you can watch the replay, and also it's where you can download the resource as well. Okay. If you do want to look up higher in the chat, I've already placed the link on the chat within this broadcast, so you can already find the link if you want, but it will be emailed out. Okay. Okay. I think we're all good. Let's jump in. Let's jump in. I've got some cool stuff I want to show, so let's spend most time on that. So I'm just going to share my screen, and we're just going to go over a few things. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you're all looking at my screen here, and hopefully most of you have been able to download this as well. So it came out in the emails prior to this session, and I'll also send it out after this session as well. Now, let's have a think about the scenario that we're working with here. What I wanted to do in this particular scenario is I wanted to run discounting examples. I wanted to in the future, in 2019, I wanted to be able to see what scenario might play out if we selected a basket of our products and discounted them. Okay. Now let's just holistically think about that for a moment. So, for example, if you say, and this is the aim if you ran some sort of discounting campaign, if you discounted a group of products, you would expect a change of demand within your store to follow that, right? I mean, if you didn't expect that, you would seriously be wondering why you're doing this sort of marketing campaign or discounting campaign. So that's really what we're trying to test here. We're trying to say, okay, well, if we discounted these particular products here, so a set of products that we can choose. So this is totally dynamic. You can select any grouping of products that you want, right? So it could be like you could set this up where it could be like a certain subgroup of your products, like a certain area within your store or something like that. So we can select these products and we can say, okay, we'll select the amount that you want to discount the selected products, okay, in terms of like within your marketing campaign. And I'm saying, okay, well, I want to discount these 20%, okay? So you'll see here that we are discounting by 20%, almost 15% of our products, okay? So 85% is just standard retail price, but 15% we're discounting by 20%. Well, if we were doing that, and this was a very popular group of products, well, we would expect more demand across the entire store, right? We'd expect more demand for the selected products because we're discounting them, but also we would expect more demand for everything else in our store as well, because we might have opportunities to cross-sell. You know, people within our store might see other things that they like which are not discounted, etc. And so we want to see if we do this, if we play out this scenario over any selected time frame that we want in the future, what would happen? What would happen to our profits? What would happen to our results? Okay. So there's a lot of flexibility and versatility that we have here. We can select any grouping of products. We can select any sort of discounting scenario. We can select what that might do to demand. And then we can see how it impacts our overall profits. And so that's the idea. That's how we can predict future results based on all of these things playing out. Okay. So it's pretty cool, right? I mean, honestly, I just don't know how this is possible in any other tool than Power BI. That's what really excites me about using Power BI for this sort of stuff, because you can be built in a really, really scalable way. And you're going to see as we go and work through all the techniques how you can actually do it, and how you could incorporate a lot of these ideas, a lot of these scenarios into something that you might be working on right now. Okay, so how do we do it? Now, there's a little bit to it. I'm not going to say that this is super duper easy to create everything that's involved here, but it is doable. It is definitely achievable for most users out there. If you were just starting out in Power BI, I'd maybe think about doing focusing on some more sort of like beginner stuff, like understanding how to write DAX and things like that. But as soon as you get past how to write DAX and understand what Calculate does, this is all possible. This is all really, really possible. Okay, now let's just do a quick review of the data. Now, I have also made this available to everyone in the resource pack, so hopefully you've been able to access it as well. But basically, the data scenario we're working with is we're a business which sells a range of different products on a range of different days, right? So just as a quick example, we have, these are all like IDs, right? But they link back to lookup tables. I'll show you in a second. So we've got a customer, we've got who sold it to the customer, which location, which product, and then a generic order ID. Now, we also have a purchase date and how much they purchased, right? Okay, so it's just logging every transaction that we make. Now, within our other tables, we have products. So you see here, we have our list of products, how much it costs to buy the product, how much, that one we don't actually use, but this one is the current price of the product, et cetera, et cetera. We've got some taxes, but we don't actually use that info in this example. And then the same for locations, customers, salespeople, okay? Now, I just want to go for this table here. This is important to what we're doing, okay? Now, what I'm going to do for my forecast, right? So the what we're going to do for this particular forecast, and it's slightly different to what I've shown a few times in the past. I'm going to take the last 3 years of results of sales or profits, and I'm going to work out the total sales that we've made over the last 3 years, and then we're going to allocate those sales to what we predict will be the seasonality allocation of those results for the coming year, for 2019, okay? Now, one interesting thing to note here is we're expecting growth, okay? We're expecting growth, and what I've done to incorporate that growth into the forecast is, check down here, the sum of these is 108%. So basically, we're forecasting an 8% increase in sales overall, but I've decided to use this allocation methodology to incorporate that into our results. So all of the growth is not going to happen in 1 month. It's going to happen in a distributed manner over many months, okay? And so this is how we're going to do that. Again, I'm going to show you how to incorporate all that in. So there's a little bit to it, but you'll see once it all comes together, it'll make a lot of sense, and you'll be like, wow, I can create some forecasts that actually are very meaningful. I'm pretty confident in that. Okay, so just a very quick question, which is quite relevant. Gustavo is asking, how do we determine the impact of the discounted versus non-discounted products? Well, we're going to go through exactly that in a second. That is very crucial to our particular scenario, right? We need to say, okay, well, what's the impact on our discounted sales? And then we need to make sure that we also show what impact the increase in demand is going to have across all of our products. And so that's a really interesting concept that I'm going to show you how to solve. Right. Okay, so hopefully that's all clear. And now we're going to start building it out. We're going to start building out this. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to sort out the model. So let's go and have a quick look at the model, okay? And so you'll see if you've been to a few of my sessions before, you've watched many of my videos, I have a pretty set way I like to set up my models, okay? And I seriously cannot recommend this enough, to set things up in this sort of way. It will, if you have relationships that are just everywhere, tables that are everywhere, it's going to take you a lot longer to understand what is actually going on inside of you, okay? And so when you set things up like this, and this is how I teach people how to do it, it becomes just so much more intuitive. And that's the key. You need to make your model really, really intuitive. And so what I do is I have my core model, I call it my core model, in here, and that just has all my lookup tables and my fact table. I have my measures out to the side here, all formatted well, so I just know, okay, these are all my measure groups, which are really key. Then I have, you see here, we're not going to use all of these, but you see here, these are actually my what if parameter tables. So I've actually just put them down the bottom here because they don't actually integrate into my core model at all, but I do utilize them. I integrate them via DAX logic. And then you see here, check this one out here, seasonality. This one is that table that I just ran through. And this, again, does not actually have any physical relationship to this particular core model, but we certainly will be integrating it into our calculations. And that's where we're going to use this, a combination of the calculate function and treat as. Treat as is this awesome function, which has really opened up all this new ways that you can actually build your models inside of Power BI. And I have started to use it quite a lot, especially for this sort of work, this sort of development work. Okay, now, so that's how I've set it up. Now, you might think, okay, and I get this a lot. You might think, oh, my model is more complicated. I need this and I need that. And I'm honestly telling you, no matter how complicated you think the scenario that you're working on is, I could almost guarantee you could create a setup that looks somewhat similar to this, okay? Might not be, obviously the tables will be different, but is somewhat as simple as this, with your measure groups here and some supporting tables down here. Sometimes I call these secondary tables or supporting tables, but I'm almost 100% confident you could simplify things a lot in here if you haven't done already. Okay, so let's jump in. So I've got this just examples, page here. This is where I'm going to run through a lot of the things that we're going to talk about, and then you'll see how these flow into the charts on the other side. But I want to talk about a lot of the techniques, a lot of even the theory somewhat that goes into these calculations. Now, one thing to note, I'm going to highlight it, is that there is one thing that is not 100% correct that I haven't actually. I was playing around this last night and I realized, well, that's not 100% correct, and I will show it to you, but hopefully by the time you get the replay, I would have figured out exactly what is going on there. But there's a slight difference in calcs that I haven't been able to quite work out, but it will all make sense in a second. Okay, so, but let's build it up. Let's build it up, okay? Now, what I've done here is I've looked to incorporate all the key things that are in the actual end page, so the more detailed setup with a much better looking visuals and etc. etc. I've tried to set them up here so we can mock things up. Now, but before we do, I guess all of these things are quite easy to implement, right? They're just tables, slices, etc. 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 But I do want to show you how you create these what if tables as well, because they're key. Okay, so somehow you need to incorporate values that you can integrate into your calculations that can, I guess the word is I label it sort of shock. Somehow you need to shock your values within your tables, so things like demand or incorporate things like demand and discounted price into your models or into your results, and to shock them based on the scenario that you want to play out, right? So somehow we need to bring in these particular tables into our reports, and these particular tables are what these ones are down here. So you see here we've got demand changes and discounting, so they're positioned down there, and I'll show you what they look like. We've got demand changes here, so you see here that we can change demand by -10% all the way up to increasing it up to 30%. So if we think that we're running some sort of discounting or marketing campaign that's awesome, well, obviously we could get really high demand or increased demand into our stores over a certain time frame. So this enables you to see that. And then the same is for discounting, I'll show you. So we can really discount products quite steeply, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to create it. I'm sure most of you already know, but if you want to create these really, really quickly, I highly recommend using this feature. In the modeling tab, you have new parameter up here. Okay, so all you have to do is click that, and then you get this pop-up box here where you can name the parameter. So it would be like, for instance, discounting. So you could go discounting here like this, and you could say, okay, well, we need decimal numbers here. So minimum is we want to discount by 30%, and obviously the maximum is 0 because we can't discount with an increased percent, right? And increment would be 2%. And then you're done. Then all you have to do is do that, but see if 0.0. Not sure. Yeah. Anyway, if we go like that, it should be okay. Oh, it's because I didn't put a minus there. Ah, there you go. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So minus 30% to 0, and then you'll just go okay. And I won't do it because I've already got it, but that's how you do it, okay? So easy stuff. Certainly play around with that if you haven't done it before. Okay, so here we go. Let's jump into how I create a forecast. Okay, so one thing to think about when you're running some sort of scenario type work, right, is you need to have a base forecast or a base budget, because when you're running a scenario, you need to think, okay, well, how am I going to compare this scenario result to something? I've got to be able to at least project something forward to compare our scenario to, and say, okay, well, we outperformed or underperformed what our base forecast would be. Okay, and so that is what we need to nail down first. That's what we need to actually get into our model first, is this base forecast, so that we can run this comparison with our scenarios. So where we can integrate these particular scenarios into our scenario result. Okay, so I talked through the logic just briefly before, but I want to show you how I've actually done it within formula. Okay, because there is actually a few steps to it. Now, the first thing I did, so you remember I said I wanted to calculate up 3 years worth of results, 3 years of historical results, and then allocate those results across every single day via my sensitivity table. Okay, now the first thing we need to do is go and find our sales. Okay, so basically this is relatively straightforward, right? I've got my total sales calculation, so like my core measure. But what I'm doing is I don't want to calculate it in the current context, because the current context is out into the future. So there is no sales into the future, right? And so what we need to do is we need to change the context within calculate. And in this case, we are going to only calculate up 2016 results, 2 years back, right? Because we're going to calculate 2016, 2017, and 2018, and then average them all up. Okay. Now, the other thing that you need to take into consideration here, and this is where things start getting a little bit trickier, is that we need to remove any context from product. Okay. Because what would happen, remember, we want to select here, we want to select a group of products that we want to discount, right? Now, if we go and select something from here, it's going to impact all of our results if we don't go and remove the context from it, from the products table. Because remember, we at all times, regardless of what products are selected, we want to know what our total sales was in 2016. We don't care about what is selected at the moment. Okay. And what all does is, like, another name for it is like remove filters. It removes any filter that could be coming from a selection in your report. Okay. And so no matter what selection we make, this is going to create a result which is always 2016's total sales. Okay. Now check out this result. So you see here that this is 10,151. Now this does not change based on any selection I make in here. So I'm going to add some products here. So you see it doesn't change, and that's exactly what we want, because these ultimately are going to be the products that we select for discounting. Okay. Now I've done exactly the same. For 2017. So you see here I'm calculating total sales of 2017 regardless of what product selected. So it's always going to show me the total 2017 sales. So 2017 sales for the business were this, so a very small increase on 2016. Now, here comes another thing we need to solve, okay? Think about this. 2018 has not finished yet, okay? So we cannot just use this technique, because if we went and averaged up all the historic results from 2016, 2017, and 2018, well, there would be a huge gap in the year of 2018 because it hasn't finished, okay? And so for us to have a good forecast, I would say, or a forecast that actually made sense, we in theory really need to normalize 2018 for an entire year, okay? And so this actually is, there's a little bit to actually solving this, but I think you'll like it. I think you'll like how I've actually done it. Okay, so let's have a look. Now, there's a little bit to, like, in terms of formula that is being utilized in here, but it's not, if you think about it theoretically, I'm going to run through it. It's actually not that difficult, okay? And it's just a matter of getting the right element in the right place, okay? Now, I want everyone to have a look at this normalization factor, okay? So this is like you could even call this like kind of like an algorithm type factor that we can associate to our results that we currently have in 2018. Okay, so we have, so what we need to do is we need to calculate, okay, how many results have we had in 2018? And obviously, say we're at the end of October now, right? Well, there's still 2 months to go in the year. So what we need to do is we need to have some sort of, or multiply the total sales we're already seeing by a factor that extends it out for 12 months instead of 10, okay? And so how I've calculated this is I've gone, how many days are there in 2018? So to say, I think, I'm guessing the 365, right? And then I'm going to say, we'll divide that by today minus the very first date of the year, so the 1st of the 1st, 2018. Okay, so think about this. If we were in the middle of the year and we had say total sales for 180 odd days, well, what we would do is we would have today minus, say, the min date, so that would be like 180, and then days in 2018 would be 365. So it'd be 365 divided by, say, 182, and then that would be 2. And so you think about it, we have half of our sales, times that by 2, times that by the normalization factor, that will bring us up to a full year of sales. Okay, and that's how we normalize the results in 2018. Okay, and that's basically what we've done. These two formulas here assist in creating this normalization factor. So this is basically just counting up, okay, how many days are there in 2018? And this is just saying, what is the first date in 2018? That's all it is. And then this normalization factor gets calculated. And then this enables us to work out, okay, how many sales in 2018 up until now, and then times that by the normalization factor. Okay, so pretty cool solution, right? And that enables us to extend the 2018 sales always in a dynamic way out 365. Because obviously you got to remember that this will change. So, in actual fact, we're in October, right? So this is going to be 365, divided by 300, and that's going to be sort of like one times 1.2 something, 1.2 or 1.25, something like that. Okay, so that's how we do it. So pretty cool technique, right? And then I'm going to bring this in here, and you're going to see what this actually comes to. So now we have these three results: 2016 sales, 2017 sales, and normalized 2018 sales. This is a dynamic calc which will change through time every single day as we get more sales in, right? And it will become obviously as we get through time, it will become a much truer number because we won't be estimating as much. Okay, so I've got a few questions on there, and basically I will always be you'll see how I solve those in a second, how we can incorporate the seasonality factor in. Okay, so you'll see that, and right now we're going to go through that right now. Okay, so we've got the last 3 years. Now we need to allocate, because you've got to remember at every single row here we've got the full year. So we need to average up all of these. Then we need to allocate these across every single day, because these are full year results, right? And we're going to allocate them based on that seasonality table. Okay, so here's the formula. Let's work through it. I'm going to bring it in. So you see here that these are now averaged up and allocated every single day. And I'm going to show you how we actually incorporated all of those things, okay, within one formula. Okay, so first of all, we need to calculate up average sales. Okay, so let's just start here. Average sales, simple stuff. We are counting up all of those different measures that we created and dividing it by 3. Okay, so that gives us an average at every single day of the last 3 years of sales. Then we need to allocate that full year result by a seasonality percent. Okay, and this is where the table comes into play. So what we're doing is that every single day we need to work out what month we are in, and then incorporate what seasonality impact that month has. Okay, and so inside of calculate, we count up, or I just used average. You could use it right. You could use sum as well, but we're going average seasonality percent. And what treat as does is it is virtually creating a relationship between these two columns, the short month column in the date table and the months column in the seasonality table. Okay, let's go and have a look how that operates. So what I've done in the date table here, so check this out. In the date table, there is a column called short month. Okay, now the date table is a lookup table. This short month column is not the column of unique values. So there is no way to naturally create a relationship between this column and anything else. Okay, so we need to figure out a way to do it, in a better way. So and how we're going to do it is virtually, and that's what treat has enabled us to do. Okay, so we got that there, and then let's have a look at our seasonality table. Okay, check out this column here. This column is again a short month, right? So there is some commonality between what that column was in the date table and this particular table. So there is now a way that we can join this up virtually. All we need to do is work out what month we are in, and then bring in this value, the seasonality percent, into that particular month. Okay, and so you see here, these all change up as we go along, and so there's different percent that need to be allocated for all of these different months. Okay, so that's exactly what this part of the formula does. It virtually creates that relationship. No physical relationship, don't have to do anything in the model. We are virtually joining these up. And so what happens at every single row is that this particular variable works out, okay, well, we're in January here. And so we need to go and retrieve the January seasonality number for January. And then when we get to, say, March, exactly the same thing happens in that particular variable. We go and find the percentage allocation for the seasonality for that one as well. Okay. So that's the hard part, I would say. So what we've done here is we've allocated our average sales across the last 3 years, average total sales over the last 3 years. We've times it by a seasonality percent, but we still have a little bit more to do. Okay, we need to, at the moment, we've allocated a total amount by a monthly factor or a seasonality. Okay, still that does not allocate it for us daily. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to actually go 1 divided by how many days are in any one month. So how many days are in March, how many days are in April, and times it by times this part, this monthly allocated number, by a daily allocation factor. Okay, And so what this particular variable does is it works out how many days are in any particular month that we are in the current context, okay? And then it goes 1 divided by that. And so it's always going to be sort of 1 divided by 30, 1 divided by 31, 1 divided by 29 if we're in February, okay? So that is the core part of this allocation methodology, okay? So we've spent a little bit of time on just the forecasting part of this, but there's a lot to learn in just this, right? We've covered calculate, treat as, how to bring in seasonality, etc. Now, good question on the chat. What is the advantage over using treat as? There is a big advantage of using treat as over a physical relationship, okay? It simplifies your model immensely, okay? There is no way for us to create a relationship between this column and this column. There's no way for us to do it. It doesn't allow us to do it, okay? And so you can do a few workarounds here where you create another table which has just every short month, because you've got to remember lookup tables need to be unique values, right? The relationships need to be between, in the lookup side, a column of unique values down to, in a lot of cases, well, in 90% of cases, a many side. So you can't do that physically here, but you can do it virtually. And basically all it does is it just simplifies your model immensely, okay? I can't recommend it enough. I've started using it much more lately because of just how simple it makes my model. It alleviates a lot of sort of redundancies in relationships, etc., and keeps my core model very simple. Okay, so now we have our forecasted daily sales, right? And it doesn't matter. This is not impacted at all by any selection we make here, because incorporated in all of those formulas, we disregarded any filters or slicer selections that could be happening within our from our products table. Okay, so a little bit there, but hopefully you like it. Hopefully you like the methodology that I've used here. I have also incorporated some logic here for the total as well, because a total doesn't work. Total doesn't work if you don't. So this is just simple and works out how many days in the year, and then allocates it somewhat. I've actually realized this is actually why there was an error. 2019. Just give me 1 second. Maybe this is why I had a slight error in my calculations now that I'm looking at it again. We'll see if that actually improves it. Okay, cool. So a question. So yeah, so in terms of the modeling, so if you haven't come to many of these sessions before around modeling, the way you want to structure your model, this is the key way. You need to identify what is a particular table. Is it a lookup? Is it a fact? Lookup tables at the top, and then you want a waterfall of filters, which are one to many flowing down to your fact table. That's the theory. Okay. Now you might try and say, no, mine is more complicated. I'm telling you right now, 95% of the time, you want your model to be set up like this. If you set it up in any other way with many-to-many relationships or any other fancy relationships, you're overcomplicating it. It does not need to be that complicated. It can be as simple and look as efficient as this. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's now what I want to do is so I've got my forecasted daily sales, right? So you see here, I've got my forecasted daily sales, and you'll see that if we have a look at the number, you'll see that as we get to a different month, the actual result changes as well, which is just purely based on that allocation, right? Okay, so bit to cover. I want to just jump over a few things here. Now I've got my forecasted daily sales. Now the other thing I want to do is I want to this is like our base forecast. This is the way to think of that, right? Now, but we want to show it in a cumulative total, right? We want to show that result cumulatively. So let's have a look here. Show that result cumulatively like this, because daily doesn't actually represent, say, change and doesn't actually represent trends that well, in my view. You want to be comparing things. You want to be comparing scenarios to base forecasts in a cumulative way. It's the best way to represent trends. Now, let's have a look at how I've done that here. So you see here, I've got a cumulative sales forecast. So you see here now it's just a cumulative total, which is counting up in a cumulative way this particular result here. Okay, now let's have a look at this particular formula. What I've done, so this looks a little bit more complex than your generic cumulative totals, but the standard cumulative totals, what I cannot do is just add this particular column or this particular measure into calculate here. You actually need a little bit more logic. You need to create a virtual table, and that's what Summarize does, a virtual table of these particular results here. Okay, so you see here date, forecast, and daily sales. That's basically what I've done with a Summarize. I use this technique a lot because when you have like complex formula wrapping up into this particular measure here, the cumulative total just doesn't work. Okay, and so you need to create, do these calculations virtually in this table, and then run the cumulative total filters inside of Calculate. Okay, so I've covered this a few times in videos on YouTube, so certainly look that up. But in theory, this is what you need to do. Okay, and if you played around with cumulative totals a bit, you will quickly see that this is the only technique that really works for more complex measures that feed into cumulative totals. Okay, so now we have a cumulative sales forecasts, which is going to be our base, that we're going to compare our scenarios to. Okay, so a little bit that went into that, but it's all pretty cool stuff, right? It's all pretty cool. Now let's have a look. Let's have a look at how we incorporate the discounting and non-discounted products into the mix. Okay, so this is the other key thing. How can we incorporate these particular values, these particular parameters into our calculations? So very quick question, are you going to post this afterwards? Yes, I mentioned that at the start. A replay will be made available. Okay, let's have a look. So let's get rid of these, and I want to show you a few calculations. So what I've done, this is at its core what scenario analysis is all about. Okay, we need to somehow within our measures incorporate those values that we are, or those parameters that we are choosing for our scenario. Okay, now the only way to do this, the only way to run scenario analysis effectively when you have multiple different scenarios all happening at once, is using iterating functions. Okay, now iterating functions enable you to do something at every single row of a table. Okay, in this particular case, we're saying at every single row of the sales table, I'm going to go sales quantity times the change in demand, right? Because remember, we're running these discounts on those on a particular product set, right? And so with that is going to come an increase in demand, and that's demand can be determined on what we select. Then we need to multiply that demand at every single row, or that change in demand, by the current price of the product. But we also within that price need to incorporate the discount that we have decided to put on those particular items. Okay, so what's happening? And this is where iterating functions are so key. If you need a bit of a review of iterating functions, search that on YouTube and you'll see some videos there. But basically, we need to incorporate these values at every single row and create that impact for the scenario. Okay, and so we're doing the demand to the quantity, and we're doing the discounted value to the current price. Okay, now let's have a look at the impact to our non-discounted sales. Now the key thing to note here, this is going to change for any product selection that we make, right? So let's actually bring, well, it's actually not going to work because it needs to incorporate this. We're in 2019 here, and this is actually just looking at daily results historically. But you'll see in a second. You got to remember, there's no context. I haven't adjusted anything regarding the context for product. So say, for instance, we select different products, this particular measure will be impacted because I haven't said, disregard filters coming from product. I've just left it as is. Okay, but check this out. And let's jump to the non-discounted sales. I want you to first of all have a look at this particular formula here. This is exactly the same formula, but check out what I've done. Remember, these are our non-discounted sales. I'm only impacting demand here. I'm not impacting price. So you know how we're running. So you think about theory holistically. What our scenario is: we're running a marketing campaign discounting products that is going to increase the demand for all of our products, the discounted products and the non-discounted products. Okay. Now, that is why we are only impacting the quantity we are selling by the demand change for our non-discounted products. But that is not all. We need to do a little bit more to this formula, because you've got to remember that currently, if we did nothing, if we just had some X here, then it would be impacted by what selections we make in our products. So we need to change the context so that we are only looking at all the products we have not selected. So all of these ones which are not selected, we only want to increase the demand on these particular products. Okay. This is how we do it. Inside of calculate, we need to change the context of this calculation. Now, what we can do here is use this really cool function called accept. Okay. And what accept allows you to do is take two tables within it, and return a list of, and return one table that has a particular list that we want. Now, the list that we want here is all of the non-selected products, right? And so basically what I've done is I've matched up, I've said, okay, what are all my products? I want to return a table of all the products that do not exist in the products that we have selected. Okay. And that's what this values function does. This is a list of products we've selected versus a list of all the products that we have. And what accept is going to do is it's going to work away at these two tables and then return one table that is only the ones we have not selected. And I'm going to change the context of this calculation by that particular virtual table. Now, I know there is a little bit to this if you are relatively new to Power BI, but it is as soon as you get into Power BI and how you work DAX, it's amazing how simple this formula is actually written based on what it is actually doing. I'm telling you, this is so efficient in terms of the calculation that we're trying to achieve. Okay, so hopefully that explained things pretty well in terms of this is how we break out discounted and non-discounted. Discounted will be calculated naturally by the selection that we make here. Non-discounted needs to be adjusted by this particular filter or this virtual table inside of calculate. Right, now, okay, so now we've broken down our discounted sales. So check this out, our discounted sales and our non-discounted sales. But you got to remember, these aren't projected forward just yet. Okay, so this just enables us to look historically at the moment. And so if you think our total sales is going to be made up of our discounted sales and our non-discounted sales. Okay, so that's the logic. Now we need to project. We need to project this forward somehow. So let's have a look. So what I've done is I've created this measure group called sales scenarios. Now I have utilized exactly the same technique as before. Okay, so I've gone and looked back. Okay, what would have been the impact of this historically for 3 years? For 3 years, exactly the same thing. Okay, so we might say, let's have a look at how these change, right? So these are all changing now based on the selections that we're making inside of our parameters, because these parameters are now integrated into all the historical changes that we are historical calculations that we're doing. So for example, we're discounting. So for example, a good example of how to read this is if we put these all to 0. So if we did nothing, right? If we did absolutely nothing, these results would be exactly the same. These results are exactly the same as the forecasts because we've done nothing. But as soon as we start changing things up, where we're discounting a group of products and then increasing the demand because of the increased foot traffic in our store, well, then the results start changing, right? Then once we have that, we can use exactly the same technique here to allocate. So now, again, we've done exactly the same thing as we did before. All of this formula is exactly the same. One thing, and I'll just, as I go through, I'll just start changing these around because I realize that this might actually be the issue that I was experiencing. Is it all making sense? Please let me know. Let me know in the chat. This isn't a big. Some of this isn't beginner stuff. I know that, but hopefully hopefully you're seeing how amazing Power BI is by going through this example. Okay, and so now we have a scenario daily sales. Okay, so check this out. I'm going to match this up to my forecast now. So forecasted daily sales. So you see here, based on this scenario, we've selected a small group of our products here, right? 8.9% of our products. We've discounted those products by 12%, and that has increased the overall demand for our entire store by 8%. And this is the based on that, this is our expected sales revenue at every single day throughout time, or throughout the time selection that we have made here. So that's the theory. That's the theory, okay? Then from here, what we can do is we can, again, do a cumulative total of our sales, right? So you see here that we have this cumulative total now of all of the scenario daily sales. Now, there still is an issue, and this is the problem which I will try to fix. These totals should, in theory, be the same. So something is slightly off here, and to be honest, I'm not 100% sure, okay? The logic works out to me, but something is not right. But I will try and fix this later on, and we'll make sure that the downloadable resources are updated at a later point. But in theory, this is, the theory doesn't change around how you do it, but something I'm missing something very small, I think, in the formula, but I will work that out. Okay, so that is really the core. I think those are really the core concepts I wanted to cover today. Now I want to show you how to bring it all together, because we've gone through some advanced formulas here. Now what I've done, I want to look at my profits, right? I don't actually want to look at my sales in a lot of cases. I want to see, if we go and do something, what is the impact on my profits? Because that's ultimately what matters, right? We can increase sales, but who really cares if it's not profitable? We want to increase profit, right? So let's have a look at this example. 15% of our products we've selected and we're going to discount. We're going to discount them by 20%. We think that will increase our demand of our store by 12%. Okay, and so let's have a look at this chart here. So you see here, it doesn't make a huge impact over the time frame we've selected. You got to remember, it's only like 4 months we've got selected here, but over every single day, it's expected to have a reasonable increase. So, 155, 181, 194. And ultimately, the increase that we are expected to see is around 20K of increased profit if we actually played out the strategy. And so that's how, so you see here, 20,790 is what we would expect to increase in our profit if we played out this exact scenario, if this scenario played out exactly as we have forecasted, right? So how I've done that here, I'll just quickly go over it. I've used very similar techniques. What I have done is I've projected out a daily profit, a daily expected profit in a very similar way to what we did with sales, right? Then to create the profit for the scenarios, what I did was I took my daily sales scenarios. I also forecasted out a scenario daily costs, which also incorporates the increase in demand, because you've got to remember your cost of goods sold will increase by the demand as well, because you're selling more stuff, etc. And then I went scenario daily sales minus scenario daily costs, and that gives me scenario daily profits, right? So what we have now is we have our forecasted daily profits, and now we have our scenario daily profits. So I'll just bring that back in. And so now you'll see that this will change based on all of the changes that we make. So you see that one's changing, but this one is staying the same, right? And so this is our base forecast, and this is what we are going to compare it to, and compare, the scenarios that we incorporate it to. Then what we can do is, from here, we can again put them into cumulative totals. So inside of here, I've got cumulative profit forecasts versus cumulative profit scenarios. And so you see that when we do that, it's just basically a cumulative total of those amounts. And then this is how we can create visualizations like so, that enable us to see, okay, well, this is what we would expect to happen. And, obviously we can change all the different parameters around what we're doing in here. We can select different products, different time frame, and see how that would impact these profit results. So that's in theory, how I got to this point okay, how we got to the situation where we can run all these various different scenarios. Maybe we want to have a look. Okay, what would happen over sort of leading up to the Christmas period? What would happen if we ran a big marketing campaign which where we discounted half of our products, for example? So you'd think that that's going to increase demand quite substantially, right? So we'll just go around selecting a whole lot of products here. Okay, that's enough. So 25%, and then we think, okay, well that's actually going to increase demand by 24%. And so we can very quickly see, okay, well here we go. This is how that impact is going to happen over that monthly period, right? And that's going to increase our profits by about 27K. And so 27K, divided by what our original profit forecast was, what's that? It's about 3%, maybe 3 or 4%, something like that. So yeah. So that's how you do it. That's how you do it. I think I'm going to round things off there because we've gone for about an hour and we've gone through some pretty good stuff. We've gone through a lot of stuff actually. Hopefully not too information overload, but as I say, you can download the resource here. You can look through all of the different formulas. I'm big on that. I want you to see underneath the hood, see exactly how it's done and try and replicate these techniques yourself. And obviously there'll be the replay as well, which you can that you can download. So if you want to receive all that stuff, if you want to get the link, then it will come out automatically on an email to those who have registered through the registration page. Okay, so that's all you got to do. You just have to register, and I will send out the link to you. Okay, I'm going to switch back to me, and we'll do quickfire questions. So I'm just going to stop my screen sharing. So we'll do some quickfire questions on what we discussed. Okay. So just let me know. Hopefully you like that one. I actually have to say I really enjoyed going through the stuff. I mean, it's pretty amazing, right? It's so amazing what you can do with Power BI. I mean, it's just out of this world compared to what you've been able to do historically. And you can take this even further. I mean, whilst I was working, doing some sort of last minute changes last night, I realized, man, you can actually take this even further. You can incorporate more scenarios. You can change around the forecasting logic that you're using. You could. This is something I might do. Is that you might want to have different. You might want to look at an entire year, and you might have a range of different marketing campaigns that you want to run, and you want to see, okay, if we ran these campaigns over these specific times, okay, what would that look like over the year? Could we, overlay some of these campaigns and really drive returns over an entire year and see how that would play out? I mean, that would be pretty incredible. And I'm telling you, you could do it in Power BI. A little bit more to it, but you could do it. Okay, so a couple of questions. Would it be possible to gather demand impact from previous sales and calculate the demand automatically? Well, the demand historically is already incorporated in the calculations because within the calcs that we're doing, we're just looking back historically and measuring, okay, well, what are people purchasing? Like, what is the demand? But all we're doing is in this particular example, is we are looking at what the impact would have been over the prior 3 years, and then overlaying what we think could happen to demand if our scenario plays out. Okay, so that's kind of in theory what we're doing. Okay, so question: is it possible to determine the optimal discount value to maximize sales? That is a very, very, very good question. You could. The idea is not coming to my mind straight away. I'd have to have a play around with that. But yes, you absolutely could. You absolutely could try and work out, okay, and you probably don't want to optimize sales. You probably want to optimize profits, I would say, because that's the more important metric. But yes, you probably could. You absolutely could. But it is hard because you've got to remember that the demand is very much an unknown quantity. So yes, you could try and optimize it, but demand could be anything. I mean, it's purely a forecast of what you think might happen, but you could. So it's hard to know exactly what to optimize to because you just don't know what demand will be. Okay, other questions. So Andrew's asked, are you assuming demand increases across the board, not just for product discounted? Yes, that is exactly what, when I went through the discounting measure and the non-discounted sales, that's exactly what I presumed. I said that demand would increase across the store. That's the scenario that we were working here. It would increase for the discounted products, but also because you've got the potential to cross-sell, upsell, etc. People in your store, you've got a much higher chance of selling them more stuff. So yes, that is incorporated into both the calculations and into the ultimate scenarios. Question from Kevin: how long did it take you to build the model the first time? This took me a little bit longer. I mean, it doesn't. A lot of these things don't take me a huge amount of time because I can build the base of stuff pretty quickly. I can get the model sorted. I know how to do all of the cumulative total patterns, and what are parameters. So not all of that stuff takes long. What took longer this time was making sure that my base forecast was correct, and incorporating, and then also incorporating the discounted and non-discounted logic and projecting that forward in the scenario. So that took a little bit longer. I had to test it. I just wanted to make sure. And as you saw, there's still a tiny bit that is not correct, obviously, with that cumulative total. So I would say like half a day it probably took me overall to get this together. But it can totally depend. And the great thing with Power BI is you can always iterate. So you can just throw something together and then just test it and iterate, very, very quickly. Okay, enhancement. Could non-working days, non-selling days, and seasonality over the week? Yes. So yes, it's a very good point. So at the moment, this is basically just saying, okay, this company sells every single day, and so some businesses don't do that. They only sell during the week, and you might want to only incorporate the seasonality impact over every single working day. But you got to remember that you would ultimately come out with the same result cumulatively. You would get the same end result because the total sales that you're making is the same, whether you're allocating it across every single day or you're allocating it just to working days. Okay, I think we might wrap up because we've just hit an hour. And I think that's probably enough. So. Well, just quickly, we've got some other good questions. So Bert's saying, shouldn't it be 2 amounts of demand? So forecasting demand for 2 amounts. Yes, that is a absolutely fine addition that you could make to the model. Okay, I have chosen not to do it in this case because I thought that from a demonstration perspective, this would be fine. But yes, absolutely, you could say, okay, well, I think my discounted products demand will increase far more than the demand for my other products. That's absolutely fine. You just need to wrap that into the correct measures within this particular technique. But very doable, very, very doable. So another question, it would be very interesting to apply this exercise for different products, premium products versus non-premium products. Absolutely, absolutely. And to do that wouldn't be that difficult, right? Because you can probably build that logic into your actual product table. Create some sort of logic in there, group your products in there, and then all you need to do is have different filters inside your report page. It's actually not that hard. Very, very easy to incorporate that here. You wouldn't need any additional DAX measures or anything like that. Okay, that's it. I think we'll wrap up. Thanks for today. Really great session. Really enjoyed this one. Great stuff to work through. I love talking about scenario analysis. It's probably my favorite technique to use in Power BI because of just the power to predict things, right? To predict things in the future is just seriously so powerful. Okay, so just a reminder, this replay will be made available and the resource will be made available. It will come out via an email shortly. If you want to see where you can download the resource right now, if you just look at the top of the chat, I put a link in there, you can download it there. Okay, expect an email from me and I look forward to talking to you soon. Cheers.